sort of leaned on my creativity and innovation and just intuitively created what I call healing yoga, which I characterize as basically an integrative healing modality, where I started to combine my practice of yoga, which focuses a lot on kind of finding sort of flow within your own body and completing a cycle of energy. How can, similar to the breath being this like manual override, a physical component being a manual override for something emotional, how can I use the body to kind of create new ways of being and new pathways to then influence the mind to relax, right? Don't feel compelled to, fight the noise with more noise. It's my view that you'll end up feeling really depleted and drained, and the people who care and want to listen will listen to you. So I guess that's one thing that I think is super important. Give yourself the grace to accept yourself, all of your needs. You aren't strange or weird for wanting, certain things. And I think most importantly, you deserve to just be free and happy. You don't really owe the universe or anybody anything.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the HEART2CORE channel, a space where inspiration intersects excellence. This is a space where true transformation begins at the heart and radiates to the core of our very own being. Today, I'm excited to introduce Audrey Tsaima. Audrey, welcome in. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Audrey Tsaima. I'm an integrative wellness practitioner. My calling is to teach people how to tap into their mind and body connection through movement and breath and body work. I have a master's of education from Harvard, and I'm a certified yoga teacher and transformative life coach. And I also bring with me, knowledge from my lived experience, healing from childhood trauma.
Tell us about Wellness with Audrey and the experience you provide there.
I offer educational science-based mind and body classes and healing sessions to private clients, my local community here in Arlington, Virginia, or the DC area, and to corporate companies. Healing yoga is an integrative modality that combines therapeutic techniques such as bilateral stimulation and visualization and energy work with yoga, movement, and breath. I also offer yoga and meditation for beginners because it's important to me to make these modalities really accessible for everyone. Healing is something that we can all tap into once we learn kind of how to use our own bodies. And I also offer life coaching, which is focused on helping people find simplicity and mindfulness in their lives. And later this fall, I will also be offering therapeutic massage as well to clients.
Why did you decide to go into massage therapy for clients?
The short answer is that I really have come to believe very strongly in the power of touch and how important that is for people. And although that can show up in yoga, it definitely doesn't really show up in coaching. Being able to work on both literally the mind and body through massage therapy, through touch, is just a really powerful modality that I wanted to be able to connect with people through and to be able to provide an offer. The long end of the story is that I kind of knew that, building upon my knowledge in the therapeutic space was sort of the direction that I was going to go in after leaving the corporate tech industry world. And it was sort of a matter of finding the right fit. So for example, like I was somewhat drawn to talk therapy, having, experience, or psychotherapy, having experienced it, in my mental health journey, but I didn't really like the fact that it was a lot of sitting. It wasn't necessarily super dissimilar to coaching, and also had a very high level of going back to school and financial and educational commitment required, to get on that path. I didn't feel like I could really have my previous experience shine earlier in the game. Like I kind of felt like I had to start from the bottom again. I thought about physical therapy actually, and similar kind of challenges around not only the educational and financial requirement, but the fact that both of these roles also, I guess, lived in the healthcare system, for lack of a better word, was also a challenge, thinking about what that might be like working in those environments. And so massage therapy actually felt like a really fantastic way for me to be able to use my body while I work, because that was really important to me. I didn't want to stay seated, for most of the work day, as I have been in the past, decade plus. So it would allow me to move, but connect with others, explore healing touch, just feel more connected as I work to my own body, because that was something that I didn't really experience as much, prior to this transition.
Yeah, I love that. Again, I'm a huge proponent of integrated therapeutic experiences. I hone in and I lean on so many modalities just to kind of keep me afloat. Again, it can be as simple as a massage therapy. It can be a chiropractic session, acupuncture. I do all of the above, and I understand that it's very important for us to do that same level of work at home wellness practices. But I want to circle back to something that you mentioned and that you offer, breath work. Tell me more about that and why it's so important. And I'm going to share a quick example as to why it's important for me. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me, it's a healing modality in and of itself. I've realized when I say take 30 minutes, I can easily just go into lotus, focus on my breathing. I feel like there's definitely a sense of recycling that's happened within my very own system, and I'm able to sort of unblock certain stuck energy in my mental space, physical space, and that allows me to navigate my day-to-day better. But please, you tell us as a subject matter expert in this field and why it's so important for your clients, especially as you're delivering these experiences in the corporate spaces.
I agree. Breath work is really a powerful tool we can use in our day to day. I really discovered the power of breath work through my own experience, needing it to calm me down, relax, and sleep at night, or just kind of energize, because I would sort of get into these little sort of spells of like languishing, probably related to the depression that I was experiencing. And breath work would kind of help me on both ends of the spectrum. But I really have leaned into it even more heavily in recent years, either through yoga classes or even, just as a modality on itself. I actually teach a workshop where I kind of teach some basic foundational breath work styles that people can leverage in their day to day, and kind of like good moments to use them, like at the beginning of the day or end of day. And I've leaned into them more heavily because I realized that there's actually, I learned the science basically behind how breath works. There's sort of the spiritual part of it, right? That like breath is life, and you have that sort of like feeling, that energetic feeling, right? When you are breathing, like you were saying about, recycling air, moving kind of air within you, or feeling that flow. But I also just realized how our breath is sort of like this really nice manual override switch that we have when we're feeling a certain way, where we can kind of manually cue our body, right? Like literally activate our sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system to know that it doesn't have to be afraid of whatever's going on, or to find calm. And so for a lot of my work, I spend a lot of the time figuring out the science, honestly, behind the scenes, not because, part of it is that the science helps to validate the practice, right? But I will admit that there are some parts of the practice where it is intuition and we kind of go beyond science, and that's fine. But I do feel like at minimum, a lot of these tools, because they're so connected to our body, it's so valuable to learn, like, for example, like how our lungs expand and how it massages our organs, actually not our lungs, but our diaphragm, and how it massages our organs, and there's such a physical component to it, that I feel like in many ways breath is, once again, a very key mind and body modality, even though it's just like the physical act of breathing and it doesn't seem that impactful. And I should also add that it's also, for me, my philosophy, at least around healing or therapeutic modalities, is that it should be really accessible, and that's kind of why I love yoga and breath and massage too. But it's all tools we have, right? Like it's our lungs, our mouths, our body parts. Same for the practitioner that's providing, the experience. And so it's everything we have and that we need at any point in time. It's on us, so that we can leverage them.
If you notice, one of my key pillars here at Heart2Core is it's healing and the process of healing. it can be anything from healing our financial well-being to our physical well-being and anything in between. And for those that don't know, the reason why I have to triple down on breath work and breathing techniques is because I have had a deviated septum because of physical trauma that happened in my nose. I do have a broken rib that I have to, navigate on a day-to-day basis. So when I jog, I often feel this piercing sensation in my lungs. So it's also impacted the way I do physical activity. So again, just by doing simple breath or breathing exercises, expanding my diaphragm, and it also helps me to be calmer, feel better, and also tap into my cerebral cortex versus always being in this fight or flight or freeze space of operating from the amygdala. Tell us more about the yoga that you offer for one-on-one or for personal clients, or again, in your own facilitation or facility, and also for corporate spaces. And what has been the benefits that your clients have shared with you when they embark on this journey of yoga?
Yeah, for private clients, I actually started with offering a type of yoga that I guess I sort of leaned on my creativity and innovation and just intuitively created what I call healing yoga, which I characterize as basically an integrative healing modality, where I started to combine my practice of yoga, which focuses a lot on kind of finding sort of flow within your own body and completing a cycle of energy. Similar to how you can train your mind to kind of create new pathways, how can you bring the body into it? Because when we feel, you know, um, certain emotions and have different experiences from the past, even though our brain is doing the remembering, there our body has a reaction to it too, right? That's how for example, to uh, shy away from touching something when it's hot and you anticipate something being hot. And so, how can, similar to the breath being this like manual override, a physical component being a manual override for something emotional, how can I use the body to kind of create new ways of being and new pathways to then influence the mind to relax, right? So those sessions that I work with private clients that are less, I do offer standard yoga classes that help strengthen, the mind and body in the general sense. But I really enjoy working with individuals to kind of release trauma or just find new ways of being in your body. Kind of a more personal story, but I really noticed as I got older, like my mom, she became a lot more frail and fragile and like literally hunched over, like kind of really small, and you see that, in kind of the way we hunch or sort of grow smaller when we feel smaller or we feel more fearful. And a lot of the work that I try to do in classes generally, but also with these private sessions, is to really kind of train the body to not feel fear, to open up. And I think it's an easier way to access than the mind. I say this a lot to people where you can't think yourself out of anxiety. Like you can't think yourself out of like stress, you kind of need to. I think it's easiest or it's most accessible to sort of work through the body and then try to kind of use that as a learning tool. And so that's what I try to do a lot with private clients. Some of the things I've noticed with working with private clients is that even I honestly was kind of surprised, but to be able to see them kind of experience that release of trauma and just to hold space for that emotion, those emotions to come up, it seems to have been helpful and impactful, for those individuals. And certainly really rewarding for me to be able to experience and to just hold space for. On the corporate side, it's really interesting to kind of see the differences between the different places that I sort of offer, yoga or mindfulness based materials. For example, in corporate environments, where I offer like a yoga and meditation session in the office, I'll notice that individuals are afraid to breathe. They're afraid when I ask them to do an open mouth exhale and just let it out. Everybody is super, super, super quiet. And I'm like, I know you have more things to let out than that. And it's just so interesting how everybody really tightens up. It feels challenging just within just purely the fact that these sessions or classes are held in that environment to allow people to find that safe space. But my hope is that, I can kind of create that sanctuary for them, a little bit at that part of the day, and that hopefully it means that they can stay connected with themselves, because I know just how alienating or kind of disassociating, honestly, you can sort of become with yourself when you go the full day, just fighting fires or stuck on online calls, and not thinking about your needs, or even taking a breather.
I appreciate you, Audrey, for really creating these spaces for people, not only personal clients, but also people in the workplace as well, because I feel like it's really important for facilitation so that they can benefit from experiences and exercises like these. I mean, I can't tell you 99.9% of the time when I do something like this, I always end up leaving a better and relaxed person, whatever that is, whether it be a Tai Chi experience, a yoga experience, a breathing experience. I'm always feeling better post session, always. Really, nothing more, nothing less. So, yeah, does it take time, energy, and effort to do this? Yes, but the benefits are endless. I love the fact that you're putting the healing in front of yoga, because the body remembers, the body stores. And if we're not processing that storage, if we're not doing the decluttering, so to speak, we will be moving differently, that's for sure. And that's the reason why I tend to sort of engage in a lot of stretching if and when I can. Again, a meditation in motion, like Tai Chi. I'm a Tai Chi practitioner, so it helps me do just that, and it also enables me to do a little bit of that breath work. Again, I'm just a much happier and joyous person, and I understand we all are. I don't want to speak for we, but I've gone through some again, as described, some layers of trauma, whether it be psychological or physical. So these modalities help me navigate life better on a day-to-day basis. So Audrey, tell us, when was that moment of realization when you decided to go from tech to wellness with Audrey, and what were the key steps you took to get there?
It was a journey for me. I honestly loved the roles and the jobs that I had, every single one of them. There wasn't one where I felt like it was a mismatch in terms of skills, or honestly a mismatch for any other reason except that I just did not feel emotionally happy, or that I could be my authentic self, or that I felt a sense of belonging, in any of the environments that I had been in. That was kind of a nugget, right? That like, or a seed that like was planted that I was sort of searching for with each job change. At some point, I kind of became stuck, because beyond just sort of the lack of feeling a sense of belonging, or that I could be authentically myself, I couldn't think of what other work environments to try at that point in time, within the scale or the way in which I wanted to kind of help people through creating learning experiences. Or even beyond that, just working, especially in a more white collar environment, let's say, I was really stuck. I looked around me and I felt like a lot of people, regardless of job function, regardless of company, they were burnt out. I looked at blue collar jobs, for lack of a better word, and it looked like people were burnt out there. Go to the pharmacy. I don't know why I have this memory of filling a prescription at Walmart, or sorry, at Walgreens, and the pharmacists were extremely busy and overwhelmed, and everybody is just being kind of taxed and stressed to the limit, right? And so I couldn't figure out where to go where I would have sort of like relief from burnout, for lack of a better word. And so that's kind of where I think I really, really hit a wall and had to take a mental health leave, for myself to figure out what was next. Again, I didn't feel like I had a lack of skills that I could use or enjoy using, but it was really the systems or the environments that I was working in that didn't feel like a fit. And I thought about going into teaching, which was, sort of my first love. And as we know in the US, teachers are extremely burnt out. In healthcare, right? People are really burnt out. Even psychotherapists are burnt out. Uh, Thought about nonprofit work because I have a passion for international development, and people are also very burnt out in those places. And so I actually took a little kind of like career transition class or workshop to sort of figure out what to do. Um, I actually never wanted to start my own business. I feel like that's something I kind of have to tell people because I feel like everybody thinks that like I was just waiting for that moment to like start my own business and go rogue. And truthfully, I kind of feel like I ended up starting my own business because I didn't really see another way forward where I could be myself and um care for myself and like love myself and be my creative, just who I am. One of the things that stands out to me too is like I really learned from taking a step back that I was spending so much energy trying to project this like strong and um, I don't know, just this like really strong, and I don't know what other word to use except very masculine person. I was recently listening to an old podcast from Brene Brown and Vivek Murthy about just, they were talking about like how much energy it takes, how like exhausting it is to like be someone you're not, and like that's how I felt. Not in a crazy way, like foundationally, I was still me, but I was just showing up and having to project so much energy to get things done and move in the way I wanted and to protect myself. And I, the me that you're meeting today is very different from the me that, when we first met. But I kind of realized, and sort of this metaphor that came up when I was working with a coach of like, I'm like a soft yellow little baby bird, and I want to be able to be that way. And to honor that and to not feel scared. And I am a sensitive person. I am someone who values softness and being quiet. And yeah, the only way forward I felt like was kind of doing my own thing, since one does need money to, survive, but doing my own thing involves a business venture. But I really, for a long time, and still kind of do shy away from the words like entrepreneur or entrepreneurship or wellnesspreneur is, I guess, the term that people are using now, because I always had this idea that starting your own business is like hustle 24/7. And I'm like, if I wanted to hustle, I would have stayed in my corporate job. I wouldn't have started my own business. So this year, or kind of like end of last year when I sort of started, to plant the seeds for my business, has really been this self-exploration, part of it through the lens of my business of like, how do I be this quiet, gentle, soft person and like create a business according to my values. And that means, not going around and chasing people, not throwing my energy out there and doing a ton of like advertising or marketing or, content creation and getting on social media. I'm not a social media person anyways. But just how can I sort of, my mantra for this year is sort of be still, so that people can find me. Because if I'm running around, like people are not going to find me. And that's very contrarian to a lot of the advice I've gotten for starting my own business. But I am in the process of growing my belief that, the people who vibe with you, like they'll find you, and those are the people you probably want to work with anyways. And everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, the entrepreneurship part or starting a business really, for me, has been creating my own experience. And if it sort of, if there's that connection between me and an audience, great. If I'm targeting that one person or persona that can benefit from what I'm offering, fantastic. But the idea here is the persona that I was targeting for Heart2CORE was Emanuel, right? So I was creating a safe space for myself, creating a space that I can be innovative with my own thought processes and create my own initiatives that would serve not only myself, but for others. Oftentimes, when you think of creating a business or company, you have to tailor it for that one specific audience. But I figured if I'm going through something, if I'm creating my own solutions for myself, I know it can serve others as well. So that was the idea behind Heart to Core. Heart to Core, the initiation process of the idea, started around 2018 when I was thinking about how large companies operate and get established. And obviously, yeah, they're mission driven. They start off with a vision. So I began to explore what's my vision, what's my mission. But I began to lean on core values. What are my personal core values? And it was an everyday process. And that's when I began to, explore the notion of self-discovery. I began to explore what were my personal core values. And of course, that can be expansive. It can start off with, 5 to 6 to even 10, and you can begin to develop core values for specific arenas in life. So my 6 core values, the first one is gratitude, intention, purpose, strength, impact, and healing. And go figure, why is the last one healing? Would I was speaking with one of my great mentors. He was like, isn't healing supposed to be the first? Yes, but unfortunately for us as people, we tend to tap into healing modalities once we've experienced some sort of breakdown or struggle or burnout. We begin to tap into those modalities, and it becomes a hopefully a healthier cycle thereafter. So yeah, and I say all that, Audrey, to ask you, do you have any personal and company core values that you can share with us?
It's funny, I've actually spent the last couple of years, it's like every year I would revisit my values, and I would make values and do the values exercise. And I think I've kind of reached a point in my life where I'm not striving for anything. And I know that like values are not necessarily about striving for something, but I feel like in a weird way, I'm sort of allowing myself and my intuition and the present just kind of be my compass instead of the values. Because, like, I'll give you an example. I probably have this in some notebook somewhere, but like, beginning of last year, I'm pretty sure what I had on my values was like peace, you know, beauty, like I think pleasure was probably one of them. But even having those values, I feel like it made me kind of strive for something, like strive for peace, or like strive for like something's wrong if I'm not able to relax or find pleasure. I'm not living according to my values. Like kind of like there's this like judgment in it of I'm doing it or I'm not doing it. And I guess I've kind of, it's so funny you asked me, I haven't thought about values in like a good couple of months actually, like since I went on leave. Just kind of threw everything, threw all those things out the window. Um, Kind of a realization moment for me, I guess. I'm trying to just let every day be as it is, and I'm not trying, like I'm just practicing being, and being
For
can be so
sure.
neutral. It doesn't even
Absolutely.
have to fit any label. Like I'm just being and like allowing myself to be and not checking in with like, does it work or not? Certainly, I think values comes up more when I'm talking about my business and when I think about like certain aspects or decisions that I make. But I'm kind of in a similar way, just going by what feels right and what doesn't, and how do I kind of create structure around that. And, I believe in things like for my business, like values around fairness and transparency and making things accessible and making time. A huge value for me is making time for like every person that I work with. I heavily rotate towards making time for people as opposed to like creating things that are just generating noise, like somewhere online. And I've kind of intentionally designed my business that way. So I've been sort of in this like winter season of like being in the underground roots of my business and figuring out the right seeds to plant and the right places to put things and think ensuring that it's true to me. But I guess I haven't really, yeah, like worked through a values list in that same way.
Well, I think, Audrey, that's the epitome of like reaching that goal and the why behind we've established, whether it be business or personal core values, is to reach that level of being. And I think you've hit that mark, Audrey. So I applaud you for that. And I oftentimes I think about in all sense of being transparent and honest, that's where I want to be personally, you know. In order to get there, I have to, be structured and hone in on this framework on a day-to-day basis in order to achieve that level of greatness, for
It's just
sure.
acceptance.
I love
And
that.
it's just like not being super attached
Oh, I
to
love
things.
that.
And don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
like I have days where I need to be like, just remember, I need to just be, and I need to not judge this thing, and
Mm,
I need to not whatever. Like I
yeah.
have to remind myself of it a lot. But like I feel like it's there for everyone, if obviously easier said than done, if we just sort of accept and let go, you know?
But through practice, I sort of hone in on the process of stillness and flow state. That's like, for me, that's how I love to navigate my day to day, is being in a state of flow while working. That's what makes us efficient in anything that we do, but also being able to remain still so that so I can engage and really see Audrey for who this person is in front of me. So that's the process of being still and enjoying the present moment. So yeah, I have to be intentional with being, unfortunately, because of, my operation day-to-day activities. But once I'm like just basking in the moment, it brings me so much joy and pleasure. In my previous episode, I talked to my subject matter expert about fine-tuning our inner and moral compass. And I think you slightly hit on that as well. What's a good practice to do that on a day-to-day basis based on whatever that sense of being is for you?
It's about being able to hear those things, those our senses, whatever they're telling us, um, which is really hard to do when you're in a very noisy environment. When you're in an environment where you're moving at the speed of light, you're probably living in the future anyway, most of the time, up here in your head. And it's been a lot easier for sure than when I was working in like a corporate job. But just creating an environment where I can have solitude, I can have silence, meditating in the sense of like closing your eyes and just observing. I do a workshop around wandering, which is actually something I practiced a lot on my mental health leave. I just kind of like fell into it. It's not like I was reading books on how to wander and, achieving some sort of way to do it. But I just kind of tried to be present. And if I felt like going down this path, I felt like down this path. I would just let myself kind of get lost and I don't know, just follow wherever and to not need to find logic in it. That's something I kind of try to help people practice is just if you feel called because the sun is in this direction or because you heard birds or for no reason except that you felt like this direction was right, just going with it and it's okay. I think a quote that really stuck with me that sort of led me down this, like letting myself wander, I guess both literally and sort of metaphorically, in life and hearing these nudges and just kind of following them and being okay with it and sort of practicing that pathway right in my head of like letting myself wander, really came from this quote that I read for like a graduation ceremony where a professor was saying, remember that three-fourths of life is serendipity. And, just kind of like letting go of that control and the illusion of control that we have, because the compass is going to spin in whatever direction it wants. So you just kind of have to listen to it, hear it, and see it and follow it.
So I have a sister who gifted me this wall decor that with the quote, "Not all who wander are lost." Really, and it just goes back to the sense that me growing up, I've always been an artist, a fine artist, and I've always been an explorer. I've also always had this hinge to explore anywhere, where it be 2 blocks up, the other side of the globe, or really 2 hours away from where I'm at. It's just, if I'm called to go somewhere, you best believe I'm gonna do everything I can in my own control to get there. And yeah, if you're called to go out in nature one day, or if you're called to just simply hang out, your body will signal, you know.
Mhm.
We have to sometimes get out of the practice of like thinking, always trying to think 2 to 3 steps ahead, but really just sort of sit in our body and allow our physical being to let us know, hey, like, I think today would be a good call to sort of hang out and just be, or watch a movie, Or today is like, you know what? I think what is my body? Oh, my body's telling me to go for a walk. You go for a walk, you
Yeah.
come back, you mentally you're reset.
And it takes practice and time, because like time in the sense of like give yourself time to wander or just listen, right? And kind of be in tune with yourself. It also takes practice because, it's like the more you start to hear yourself, it's like meeting a new friend, right? Like when someone's in your life, you can recognize their voice versus a stranger's voice. I feel like when I started to wander more, I could hear more when like my body needed a walk, or I don't know if I needed a rest day and not a day to like push myself more intensely. But when I started to like sit a lot, for example, when I came back from my mental health leave, I started to sit a lot again. I noticed the voice gets like quieter and quieter and quieter. And suddenly I'm capable again of sitting, 5 to 8 or whatever hours. Whereas I was like actually wanting to move a lot when I didn't have to be in that space around a desk, right? So I think it takes, yeah, practice, time, and kind of, I guess, some of the discomfort of giving yourself that time. I often see this happen with people. And, I am a culprit of doing this too sometimes. Of it's just easier, especially when you have downtime, technically you're not working, to maybe consume media or consume something and just kind of sit around. And then you're gonna not be able to hear that voice inside of you, or feel that nudge because you're so busy like consuming something else, right? And so you just kind of like spend the rest of the evening or something watching like a movie. And maybe this happens over and over again, right? And you kind of like start to lose touch with yourself. So it's in those moments like being like, okay, I'm not going to turn on the TV. I actually, no joke, have blocked streaming media sites on our router after 8 p.m. every single day. It's blocked until 7 p.m. on every single device in the house, so that, we can't go online and stream anything, and we have to just figure it out the way people did back in the day.
I'm always a fan of tech innovation, so I'm always looking to explore, social media outlets because I've always been intrigued by that experience. But also, I know that if consumed too much on a day-to-day basis, just like everything else, is going to impact me in a negative way. So what I've done recently is I've actually become more of a book person. And really, just like meditation, I see meditation in books because not only I'm consuming great content, I'm also just basking in stillness. I prep myself a cup of tea and I'm just reading, and it's so peaceful. And I'm triple down on mindfulness as well. And also that's also one way of a mindful practice to to consume content through books. Taking it back to
Mhm.
basics for me. That's been a good habit. I love reading. In the martial arts practice that we practice, a lot of it, we get the best effect in our strikes by relaxation. And it's all about the process of surrender, especially when we can't, like when we're just hit a breaking point. Like we have no other choice but to surrender. But if we indulge in the surrendering process early on, we don't have to constantly hit our heads on a glass ceiling. We can surrender to process on a day-to-day basis, and that creates more of a fluid, soft lifestyle, and we can surrender to the day-to-day and really just enjoy life better. So do you want to give us some tips to surrender on a day-to-day basis and the benefits to doing
Like
so?
for surrendering, it's a hard one, like I said, that I'm still practicing. I read, Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, and that was really helpful for me to just, yeah, think about how you can soften, soften to the process essentially, right? Like surrendering to it, softening. Um, she talks about, she talks a lot about loving kindness, and just, I think turning towards loving kindness has been really helpful, to surrendering, especially when there's people involved. I would say that's been really helpful for me. Actually, one thing that I learned in my group therapy experience that I had last year was sort of, uh, practicing letting go of judgment, because I think that's also what makes it really difficult to surrender, is getting stuck in the judgment piece. So what I started doing last summer, and I came from a really judgmental family. They still kind of are. So, I'm still got a lot to let go of there, but it's like just transforming a judgment into a description, right? So, for example, I might have been driving behind someone, getting annoyed that they're like going so slow. In the past, might have been like, oh my God, why is this person so slow, right? Like, oh, they're so annoying or whatever, right? Where this person doesn't care about the people behind them, that kind of thing. Um, and kind of just instead of like trying to tell myself, let go of the judgment, don't judge, right? Like you can tell yourself as much as you want. It's not going to just go away and disappear. I started rephrasing them out loud as descriptors of this person is driving below the speed limit. This person is driving slower than I am. Do you know what I mean? Like just things that are kind of more descriptors. And I kid you not, just practicing that over and over, even for like mundane things like that. I feel like it really changed my mindset around not reacting really quickly and just having a neutral viewpoint. And then it's like, okay, I can just the majority of things go. When, I can get to that point and I have to keep reminding myself, it comes back. I notice when judgment kind of comes back and I have to go back to descriptors. The other thing that I think has been really helpful for me is reading about the research behind highly sensitive people. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's by Elaine Aron, and I consider myself to be a highly sensitive person, but I didn't really know there was that field of research out there until I encountered her work through a coach that I was working with. Silly to say, because like nothing has changed except for that knowledge that exists, but it sort of gave me this validation. Um, and permission made me feel like I had permission to kind of just be myself and um, let go of feeling like, oh, I should be like someone else, right? Or why do I have these needs that other people don't have? And just, so what? I have these needs, it's because, I, like many other people, we're all on a spectrum of how sensitive we are. It's not like a fancy group of people who are highly sensitive, but yeah, just giving myself the grace to just be my weird self because I have these needs and letting it be and not questioning it. So I would say those two things have helped me let go of a lot. There's obviously still stuff that comes up that I have to work on. But those two things, I guess, come to mind.
You mentioned something that I thought of this person. He's since he's passed away. I'm not sure if you heard Wayne Dyer and The Shift. He produced a movie, The Shift, and when you talk about descriptors, I often think about shifting that perspective to a more descriptive response versus reaction. And I think his film, The Shift, is very powerful in that sense. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, the change can always be subtle, and I think that's where the most powerful of changes go into play or go into motion. Is that sort of ripple effect of making those subtle changes. They're extremely powerful and beyond impactful. So something as simple as Wayne Dyer described, having that shift of perspective goes a long way, and it takes a lot of practice, of course, because again, I used to be a very reactive person, and I had to triple down on practices so that I can be more responsive to scenarios.
One thought, too, that I guess I would add to the whole, kind of shifting mindset piece is that I do feel like words are really powerful, they are literally in the sense that it's how we communicate and everything, but words are kind of like we have a dictionary in our head, right? And there's like commonly used words that we pull from, right? And our mind likes to go to those. And we love sense making as people. Even if it doesn't make sense, we want to find sense in it, and create our own sense in it. That's just how we are as humans. And so, I feel like a lot of that process of learning to describe or shifting the words you use, right? Like, or changing your reframing your view, changing your view about it. It really is kind of like restructuring and shifting and sifting out words that maybe were kind of harmful for you from your mental dictionary. And it is literally how our brain kind of organizes that info, So I feel like that's why it's so powerful to think about like the kind of word aspect of it, because words do become like thoughts and etc. And then the other thought I had about the HSP comment that you made too, is just to share that, that's, for example, realizing that I was an HSP and surrendering to the fact that, like, I used to think to myself, why am I so sensitive? Nobody else is bothered by these comments at work. Why am I the only person who's like, bothered by XYZ thing at work? Or HSPs like commonly kind of see patterns like of things that don't work at work before other people do. And so I start to kind of feel negative about it before other people do. And part of that surrendering for me with being an HSP is like, clearly I just can't, work in these environments, which is, sort of what also just led to the whole like me doing my own business and starting my own business and doing my own thing and just accepting and acknowledging that, even though, like I mentioned, I didn't necessarily originally want to like go down that path. And I would have loved to have found, a company where I felt like that would have been possible.
We're still seeing the reality now. We're just describing it differently so that we can unlock a capacity for ourselves to be at ease and accept like the circumstances for what they are, and not react to those, because at the end of the day, if we react in a negative aspect, we're only hurting ourselves. So Audrey, tell us, for those experiencing a breakdown, going through some sort of struggle, or wanting to embark on their next trajectory in life, what pieces of advice would you recommend or give them to bridge that gap, fill that gap, to successfully and confidently embark on their next journey?
I think it's really important to be able to sit with yourself and build self-awareness first, right? Like self-awareness is literally step one before kind of figuring out, where to go. It's like, where am I? And where do I go? Like, where do I go from here? And again, I can't stress enough that I really feel like, uh, and I view this to be the case in so many instances where we're just like not set up for success in terms of the systems around us to do, like, to be the best version of ourselves or do our best work. And I think when it comes to finding quietness and peace and just being able to hear yourself, I do feel like it's challenging, right? You have to be really intentional about stripping away things that are noisy in your life or finding environments that are quieter, and just figuring out, I guess, what it is that you want or bubbles up for you, and just hearing that. I feel like it can be really challenging when people are telling you, you should do this or you shouldn't feel this way, or um, definitely being around environments or people where it's kind of invalidating your experience. You should probably know from the get-go is going to make your life a lot more challenging to figure out what you need. So yeah, honestly, I feel like that's step one and the most important step. And then what comes after that, as much as it feels like a cop-out answer, is kind of up to you, right? There's no right or wrong way. Nobody lives your life. It's going to take experimentation. It's going to take iteration. I personally found coaching as a modality to be super impactful for me to help with each iteration. And at the beginning, like, start to help me like evoke, my own awareness of where I was and what I needed, and just like mental models that I had that was like that weren't working for me. That's honestly kind of why I went into coaching, because I felt like it was such a impactful modality. Just being open and vulnerable with yourself first and foremost. There's a sunk cost fallacy to some degree, right? Of like keeping things the status quo. And you at least know for sure that nothing is going to change if you do the same thing, So, like, as scary as it may seem for some people to take the next step, or there's always other things that get in the way, I guess I would encourage people to just prioritize themselves.
In the age of noise and trying to reduce that noise, I think for me, that has helped me a lot. Having boundaries, or healthy boundaries, let's just say that, because I think it's important to, to immerse yourself in community and connection, but also carving out that space to have those opportunities for assessing not only yourself, but what we want next in life, and making it from a space of, and I talked in my previous episode of not overreaching, but stretching ourselves for that next opportunity. And hey, if we're going through a struggle, it's okay to take a moment and pause, reflect, and assess. And really, I'm a fan of journaling, so I tend to like write stuff down as well, and sort of map out what that journey may potentially look like. And sometimes I say, hey, you know what? I think I'm kind of chill right now. Maybe I was just having a bit of an emotional moment. Now it's time to just sort of reassess myself and hey, I think I'm chill right now. And if I do want that change that I want to see in my own life, then I can sort of map out what's it going to take and have, smart goals to get there.
I think it's really hard too to prioritize yourself, right? It's like easier said than done. And I guess if you feel like, I think this is important, if you feel like you're consistently not able to prioritize yourself, one thing I learned is just having good intentions is not good enough, right? Like, in terms of like actually making change happen. Like you can have the positive intention to prioritize yourself, and trust me, I have been that person. And it maybe never happens, and you need something like more intense, for lack of a better word, to support you. And for example, for me, that meant I needed to literally take work out of the equation because I could not prioritize myself with work in the picture. I could not imagine being here today if I hadn't taken work out of the picture, because there was no way in hell in that system that I was going to have enough time, enough space to like even think about how I was going to prioritize myself, you know? I can put as many calendar blocks as I want, but like the system's working against me, you know? So I just think it's really important that, I don't know, it can be frustrating if you keep setting an intention that doesn't happen. And so know when you need to probably take more drastic measures, you know, to make it happen. And obviously it took privilege to be able to take a mental health, you know, leave. But I do think there are a lot more opportunities out there that unfortunately in our system we have to do our own research and figure out on our own. But I think it's definitely worth the energy if you're able to kind of explore what that might look like.
How important is it to have an advisory board, like a personal advisory board that you can lean on to help you navigate those circumstances and scenarios? By that, I mean a personal trainer, a life coach, obviously a mental health therapist, and things like that.
I think it's important to have a support system, no matter how big or small that is. And I guess I'm leaning away from advisory board only because I guess I'm not 100% sure what that means, even from my context, you know. And I can share a little bit about why I feel a little uncertain about what that means, because for my whole life, really, I've been kind of relationship poor. And what I mean by that is like my parents didn't prioritize me having friends growing up. They were very fearful of people. They didn't really prioritize friends. I was very much in the mindset of career, school, ignore relationships. Not that I didn't have friends, along the way, but it was always kind of secondary to other things in my life. And so I kind of found myself, at a point where, sure, I have friends, but I didn't really feel like I had a very strong level of support from anyone, honestly, beyond my husband, basically. And even for that, I'm very grateful for, but even then, he can't do the work for me, right? And he's not me, and he doesn't you know. So I guess what I mean to say from that is that I had kind of a lonely experience throughout my life, but what I kind of learned from that is to really listen to yourself, for better for worse. Didn't have a ton of noise from friends telling me different things, and I think you can get a lot of knowledge and support just from yourself. And if you have just, even if it's one other person or two people, to give you their thoughts based on what they know about you, it can be really helpful, but at the end of the day, they're not you. And they didn't live in your shoes. And so I'm not sure. I think for a lot of people, an advisory board would be really helpful. I guess I don't think it's completely necessary, although, of course, there's support to be had there. What I ended up doing during my leave was that I had signed up for a group therapy program. So obviously there was a group aspect to it. Um, in a way, I guess that served as a sounding board, even though it was, people that I hadn't really met before, didn't have a super deep relationship with. Um, and I also went to my local yoga studios. Like we had these philosophy nights and just discussion nights for the community to get together, which I was really grateful for because I read about the idea of sanghas, or like kind of like community sort of sharing spaces in radical acceptance, in the Radical Acceptance book by Tara Brach. And so I leaned on those as places where I could kind of experiment with different versions of myself, because these are people I hadn't met, and just kind of see what happened, as I sort of like explored who I was without this huge work identity. I kind of just focused on listening to myself.
We're hitting on three different segments of support system, right? The first one is the individual, and that comes through, for me, from my experience, it comes through the form of faith, right? Or whatever practice you may have in that regard. The second one comes with immediate group and support group systems, right? Which you've honed in on so well, and the why behind it's something that will benefit you. The third one is community involvement and support group, and I think that's very important as well. That's where I sort of engage in the experiences of Tai Chi, and you have those physical fitness groups, and some dance classes as well, or meditation groups. So it can go soft, and it can go something much more active, or a jogging group. And I think that's very healthy. And I guess the overarching theme here is outlets, somewhere where we can sort of have that sounding board. And so an advisory board, I think they approach feedback from that non-biased approach, especially if you have hey, I don't want to sound too cheesy, but especially if you're sort of stretching yourself for the next golden objective. An advisory board serves as my accountability system, and everything else is acceptance system, like you mentioned. What's your favorite healing or wellness modalities that you like to practice on your own? And what are some of the most common practices that someone can indulge in at home for self-care?
Yeah, my favorite practices are definitely anything movement oriented. And I say movement oriented for no other reason than the fact that we literally need our bodies to process life. We need to be moving. This can even be walking, like literally walking, taking walks. I spent so much time just, wandering, walking during my leave, and now more so than I ever had while I was, working a corporate job. But moving, walking, yoga, of course, I love very deeply. Uh, those are all things that combine the mind and body in such a critical way, that I feel like everybody should have the opportunity to do every day. I also like to practice breath work, like we talked about. So again, accessible things that don't have to be complex. Breathing to relax, breathing to, feel more energized. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to like download a special app. You don't have to really do anything, but just do things with your body. Even chores and enjoying the pleasure, as weird as it sounds, that's something I discovered finally recently, of doing the dishes and doing laundry, things that we kind of try to automate out a lot in our life, which is really funny because we're like automating out all these pleasurable things that bring us back to our body, right? Like we drive everywhere. I'm fortunate that I can walk a lot of places in the city, but yeah, anything with, doesn't have to be intense movement, or going to the gym, just gentle everyday movement. That's pretty much what our ancestors were doing in the past. So
I love that you mentioned gentle movement. Say, for example, if I indulge full time in my work, and sometimes those happen where my workload will increase, I notice that my body sort of like tugs at me, like, hey, like maybe you should start doing a little bit of walking or something. But it again, like you mentioned, it doesn't have to be anything strenuous. It can be 10 to 15 minutes of of mindful walking. And you know, and notice that I said mindful walking, meaning once we do engage in walking, we should try our best not to think about, you know,
I agree.
priorities, you know, or work stuff.
Yeah,
I'm still in tech, and but I've struck a balance between like really getting efficient in my day-to-day job roles and responsibility, and also learning how to have that space for wellness and physical activity, or even mindfulness and stillness. So
I am glad that you feel like you found that balance. And I'm obviously not you, I'm not in your day to day. But I do think that, like, for the majority of people, it's almost impossible to find at like in a busy white collar work environment. And I think it's even harder with remote work, especially if your schedule is packed with meetings. I mean, I found it was impossible, which is kind of why I left, because even if I wasn't having a ton of meetings, because I felt like, for me at least, and I don't know if other people feel this way, but sitting in front of the computer for so many hours, it almost feels like you get like literally sucked in, right? Like, I mean, everything on the computer is sort of designed to suck us in, right? Like, engage us. Even that makes it more difficult to hear yourself, or move or go out and walk and do mindful things, to like move your mind away from work. And if you're doing that for a ton of hours and you only do the mindfulness stuff for 30 minutes or an hour, or you only have space for 30 minutes to do that, right? It's like not the same. Like, it became so difficult for me to focus in yoga class after work, or even in the middle of the day. And it was frustrating, And so I feel like I'm not advocating that everybody quit their job or anything like that and go do their own thing. But I guess want to call out that, like, it's really hard. I do not have an answer for how to do that in a busy working world, which is why I'm choosing to not be in a busy working world, because it's stacked against you.
I decided to establish this podcast to serve others. Really, that was my vision and purpose. But I think I get you. I'm still doing things in tandem. For me, that's okay. I've come to that agreement with myself. Like, hey, I'm gonna do this and see where things land. But health is wealth for sure. Let me just say that I agree with that 100%. If I fully commit with the pursuit of economic outcome, for me, I know I'm not going to be healthy. So I have to continue to create this nice balance of it all. And for me, that brings me joy and happiness. And knowing that I'm still serving a community with this type of content. And I think it's okay too to have these leaps, because the last thing I want to do is to have or sit in this regretful space of not taking that chance on myself.
Yeah, and I'm honestly okay if after this year of experimentation, I'm kind of saying a year because I graduate from massage therapy school in November. But so I've had sort of like December of last year to, at the point in time, November, to kind of try out just like an initial year, right? Like, I'm okay with finding out that, you know what, I tried to create a business in my own way and it didn't really work out. And like, strangely, I feel that I will be totally fine.
What best practices, techniques, method do you establish on a day-to-day basis to keep you grounded in the present moment?
Every day I wake up in the morning and I do three really large arm circles when I get out of bed. I kind of find that maybe this is a little strange, but we tend to sink into our mattresses, and so we kind of like curl up and round a little bit. And so I don't know why, it's just felt so like breath of fresh air and kind of confidence boosting, and you're just like opening and widening and taking up space in the world to do three, like with my inhale and exhale, kind of large circles and rounds of breath. Um, so every morning starts that way. I hug my husband every morning too, because hugs are valuable. And for a while, it's been off and on. I used to do like 10 push-ups in the morning. I've noticed, store a lot of energy in my arms. particularly negative ones. And so I find that kind of working them out a little bit in the morning to be super valuable. And then we always take a walk, just like a little walk around this park nearby in the morning, unless the weather is like super, super bad. So that's kind of like my morning, hello world, I'm here, I'm taking up space. This is me kind of practice. We try to take afternoon walks, or I'll walk by myself a little bit. And then in the evening, I will do kind of like a little bit of breath work, a variation essentially of box breathing to help me like 20 rounds, kind of fall asleep. And I like to do a visualization of just kind of like my body healing wherever it needs to do healing. So for example, for a while when my foot kind of hurt a little bit, I would just sort of imagine like flowers kind of growing on my feet and like, just like nature metaphors for like flowers, sort of blooming and growing in my body. And that would really help me sleep a lot because it was more severe when I was like working, in corporate. So now it's a little less stressful, but yeah, I do that before bed. I've been finding a routine of cleaning once a week to actually be really refreshing to kind of like, especially on Monday morning, just clean, set the week off right. You feel set up for success, kind of let go of the previous week. So I think cleaning definitely has a really nice place in terms of that, like letting go ritual practice. So on occasion, and I kind of stepped away from a little bit, I'm going to bring it back. I do I use a headset to help me meditate. And it's called the Muse headset. They have like little meditation programs you can do where the headset kind of like measures your brain waves and rewards you when you are in a calm state. It's basically called neurofeedback, which is, there's like, you can read up on the scientific literature behind it. But I've been finding that really helpful just to do like 5 or 10 minutes, especially if I'm feeling a certain way. And yoga is super helpful. I do that regularly, which is obviously it's a win-win when I get to teach and kind of practice it at the same time. I'll share a random one that I did, like that I started doing last year. That's kind of weird, maybe. But I started just saying things that I hate when I get upset, So like I'm trying to use a new piece, like a piece of technology, and it's bugging out because hey, software is super buggy nowadays, actually. And just saying how I feel out loud, like I hate that this app is crashing on me every single time. Like just verbalizing that and sort of letting it out and letting it go has just kind of helped me prevent like a buildup of like irritating things that happen during all these little irritations since like, we live in a system with a lot of decision fatigue and a lot of like decision paralysis and these issues that keep coming up, right? Like it's like there's a lot more change happening that requires us to adapt. And so just verbalizing when I'm frustrated has been really helpful.
Becoming more social conscious of what you're feeling, pinpointing where you're feeling that, and applying a sound to that, even if it's vocalizing what you're experiencing, has been, I've come to find out, very beneficial for a lot of individuals, to get through that, and they'll ultimately live a better lifestyle and live above the surface of those emotions, right? By that, I mean, you can show up as your better version.
What's really funny? I really learned this through my kind of, through my journey that your body has all the knowledge it needs, right? Meaning, like to your point about vocalizing, like, for example, one kind of breath that we do to kind of release, like pent up energy and emotions or whatever is like lion's breath, where you go like, with your tongue sticking out and you kind of let out, right? But it's like when we're frustrated, you naturally go like, you naturally touch your head, your forehead, right? You're like, oh my God, that's so annoying. And your body kind of, I mean,
what you realize in a lot of these healing modalities is the same places you might touch, like provide some healing touch to, or the same sounds you might make or actions. They're things that our body naturally does. It's just we don't really often let it do it, right? Maybe because we need to stay sitting in a chair, or we can't make noises because we're gonna confuse everybody around us, right? Like it's kind of just like freeing these things that we already, or like our body already knows.
In our Tai Chi space where we practice, we have healing sounds where we, deliver those. Like you mentioned, the lion's breath is very important. We have stuff that we do to, remove those blockages that we're experiencing. It's a nice outlet. Again, going back to that outlet, we oftentimes just need those outlets to express ourselves. And we can do this in a variety of ways. For me, for example, again, I dabble in songwriting and music making, but for me, being able to vocalize what I'm writing, it's an outlet. And I oftentimes end up leaving a better person or just a relieved person. Going back to that, it's a release. That was the key word here. We have to release those emotions through an outlet such as vocalization. And something as simple as like hugging your partner on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you can only imagine the type of relief that happens in that experience. By relief I mean feeling safe, right? I think that's what I can put, or feeling nurtured. I think that's very important. Box breathing for me has been so important. That's my personal grounding technique. The most simplest of forms is just being able to wake up, do it in the morning, and also at night. I like to sort of meditate and focus on breath. Body intelligence, I think, is very important. I think we have all of the info that we need to sort of thrive in life. I also like to, look back and look forward, not to, ruminate or step into like this sort of planning stages for what's next, but really to get playful with those two concepts and notions. Are there any words of wisdom that you like to tell your previous version of yourself, be it 18-year-old self, 25-year-old self, whatever the case is in that regard? Any words that you'd like to share and reconnect with that version of yourself and honor that person?
Yeah, when I thought about this question, I definitely struggled with at least the future part, because of wanting to be in the present. But for my past self, really just, knowing that I'm enough, probably would have been the most valuable thing. I mean, I could have probably told my past self that, and I still probably would have gone on the journey that I did, because it's one thing to say it to yourself, and it's another thing to really believe it, right? I think that's the message that I would want to have driven home, for my past self. Anything necessarily that I would want to say to my future self, I guess.
And that's okay too. That just means that you're again, you're perfect in the present moment. But I will follow up with that question though. What's next for wellness with Audrey?
I don't know, in the sense that I'm kind of just trying to follow the flow and see where it leads me. I will be graduating from my therapeutic massage program in November, so I'll begin offering therapeutic massage to clients, which I'm really excited about. And I definitely plan, whether through my business or just me personally, on building kind of more of a community of support, for myself and for others in the Northern Virginia, DC area. And yeah, I guess we'll see what the future holds. I think everything will be fine, whatever it ends up looking like, for me. So I don't know, for a while, I had a kind of unhealthy relationship with growth, and like trying to be like always on a growth trajectory and growing. And I think that's something we also kind of learn, growing up and in the workplace, and like moving up. Like there's a ladder, you're always moving forward or up or whatever. I don't consider myself to be a Taoist or anything. I don't really um, understand super deeply the religion. However, um, or spiritual way of thinking, kind of whatever bucket you want to put it in. I have been really enjoying playing with this idea of kind of accepting yourself as, I guess, what they call like an uncarved block. In other words, however you are, you just are, right? It's like it goes back to the whole like just being who you are and just being. And there's no like growth, there's no trajectory. I mean, it kind of naturally like might happen, but I just mean like not, I don't know, like I feel like there's like some striving in growing, if that makes sense. And just kind of like letting things be. And so I feel like it's okay to like not grow, for a bit and just be. And whenever that looks like, it's okay.
Like my Sifu, he brings up the whole concept of like, when you're sharpening a sword, if you over sharpen that sword, it's gonna break. Same goes for burnout. If you're striving to like be too successful, you're gonna burn out, and your health is gonna be impacted,
Yeah.
right? And things of that nature. So I love to be challenged like this because sometimes I do need that friendly reminder to just chill out. You know?
That's a good metaphor. And yeah, I mean, it's hard, right, in the workplace because you have annual reviews and you have to set goals and even goals. Like, when I first started, like first 2 months, I was like setting goals for myself for my business. And I actually stopped. I like don't have any goals anymore. First, it was like I had goals and then I scaled back my goals to be kinder. And then I'm like, any goal like taints the intention of allowing whatever's going to happen. Because I'm like, oh no, the month is like coming to an end. Like, am I gonna hit a goal that I set, right? So it's hard. I feel like to think about growth without getting carried away, like with, reaching.
I agree with you so much, Audrey. I guess for me, it's just in my nature to chill out too much. So I need some sort of
Maybe
parameters to
you
keep me in
don't need,
line. Maybe I
maybe
don't
you don't
need.
like, maybe, okay, have you heard the book The Tao of
Maybe it's the
Pooh?
exact
The
which
Tao
one?
of Pooh.
The Tao of Pooh. Oh, of the cartoon character. Winnie the
Yeah.
Pooh. Oh, look
Yes.
at that.
Like Winnie the Pooh. I don't know if you watched his stuff a lot, but he was just like this chill bear and he like didn't try to do anything. He was just day to day. I'm chill. I'm gonna wander around. And like, I mean, the book was kind of using him as an example of like he is an uncarved block, meaning like that's just how he is, and like he's just accepting that nature and enjoying life, and he's not trying to be like one of the other characters in the Winnie the Pooh story. So like maybe you're naturally chill, but that's just how you're supposed to be. You don't have to like make sure you got a fire lit under your ass. Like you can
For
just be
sure.
a calm person if you want.
I guess for the most part, nowadays, like I've just been coming from a space of curiosity, exploration, and intrigued by learning new concepts where I'm like, I'm curious. I kind of poke my head into, for example, I'm certified in Reiki, and I love that process
Cool.
of energy work and healing
Yeah.
and facilitating um, that aspect of catering to someone and serving others for, again, just for feeling better. I think for me, that's where most of our healing happens. We're not doing much, right?
Hmm.
We're just kind of just basking in what life has to offer and allowing it to happen and accepting it for what it is. Was there any special activity or something that you enjoyed, a hobby that you enjoyed doing when you were a child that you're looking to do again as an adult? For example, for me, it was art and also rollerblading. I started rollerblading again not too long ago, like a couple of weeks ago, just going around here in the neighborhood, and it was so gratifying to do. What's the case for you? I'm curious. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it. Also because there's always been this push of like, oh, if you're unhappy at work, go do your hobbies, and that kind of thing. And I enjoyed writing a lot when I was younger and reading. And so those are definitely things that I've kind of like picked up again, mainly the reading, writing-ish, writing off and on. But otherwise, I feel like I spent a lot of my childhood working towards something like. Um, and so I'm still kind of on this like adventure of just trying new things and enjoying different things and kind of like in a weird way, it feels a little bit like getting a second chance at like childhood. That makes it sound like I didn't have a childhood. I did, but just I don't know. I do feel like I had to grow up really fast, you know? And so yeah, I don't know. I've just been enjoying like nature more and discovering other things that bring me joy.
I love that aspect, actually. Just being able to, again, throw on that explorer hat and enjoy life.
I feel like a lot of it is letting go of responsibility. That's what I've kind of discovered. Seriously. I mean, why did you have so much fun as a kid? Because you had no responsibilities, including coming home to cook or make sure you eat the meal that you prepped. Otherwise, like whatever consequences are going to happen. You know what I mean? And so like my husband and I experimented a lot with spontaneity last summer, and we've continued to do that, especially now that the weather's better too. But it's like just go out, let the day take you wherever, quite literally. And, if you decide to eat at a restaurant that day, instead of thinking about money or whatever other stuff, just like letting it happen. And not looking at the time. Like I don't have any timekeeping device on me usually, seriously. Especially on the weekend, right? Like you can really afford to do that on the weekend, I think. At least if you don't have things you've signed yourself up for, which is its own thing. It just time expands literally, it feels like it expands and just feels really fun because you are kind of that kid who like doesn't have to worry about things anymore. And obviously it's really fulfilling.
This is why I love having these conversations, because I get to extract and allow the conversation to unfold, to hit on those key aspects, something like spontaneity. Ironically enough, Audrey, it allows us to grow as people.
It's true. It's true. You're 100% right. You're true. But we're not looking for it, right? It just
We're not
happens.
looking for it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So how ironic is that, bring the conversation full circle and full sail, but or full circle, but yeah, it just happens. And unfortunately, sometimes we do have to put it into context so that someone tuning in and listening can hear like, you know what? Maybe I should be more spontaneous in my day-to-day life. I think for me, it unlocks growth, it unlocks opportunity to connect with others, and it allows us to get to know ourselves at a deeper level. Again, in context to what this platform is all about. But
And it helps mindfulness in all the different ways, right? Like I want to like double emphasize the like not looking at time, for example, right? Like that helps so much just with being present. And you don't look at time, you're not like, oh, it's noon, I gotta go eat whatever thing, whatever meal. You just eat when you're hungry. You just eat the amount you want. If you end up only eating one meal a day, which strangely enough has happened a number of times, like when we do a spontaneous day, that's fine. I guess my body only needed that much,
once I do say like leave my space and go out into nature, yeah, just time isn't a factor. Spontaneity unlocks experiences for everyone and the
Yeah.
individual. Yeah, so Audrey, do you have any recommended resources that you'd like to share with our grander audience, be it books, movies, songs? What would you like to recommend for us?
I'll keep it simple to two of my top picks. They both happen to be authors, I guess, so book related. But the first one is The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron that I mentioned about HSPs. Um, and then the second one is Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a really, famous Buddhist monk who passed away, I think 2 years ago now. I love pretty much every single book I've read from him, and they're all really short, accessible. Like I would say both of these books are accessible, or both of these authors. Thich Nhat Hanh's books especially, I feel like are a very accessible way to think about mindfulness and bringing mindfulness into your daily life, every little moment, right? It's not like meditation too. It's not like meditation is not just about sitting still, listening to whatever tape or app or somebody talk, right? Like there's so many ways to find meditation and mindfulness. And so I really, really, really love all of his books. I guess Peace is Every Step is one that I particularly like. but he has just so many really great nuggets of wisdom everywhere. It's not a difficult read for, like, you don't have to be Buddhist. I'm not Buddhist. It's just very peaceful and accessible writing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those nuggets, Audrey. And yeah, I would gonna let's commemorate this episode to both Wayne Dyer and Thich Nhat Hanh. Audrey, list out any call to actions for our members. Like, where can people find you? Your website. If you want to share your email address, that's fine too. Any handles, social media, where people can see you, view your work, and get to experience wellness with Audrey.
I can be found at wellnesswithaudreyt.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. That's where I write every month, kind of about my mental health journey and some of the modalities that I tried, some of the lessons that I learned. I kind of just write about my experience leaving corporate America and the different insights that I kind of gleaned before I left to kind of create that moment of transformation for me. So you can sign up to receive those articles through my newsletter. I love working with individuals who are trying to really own their healing journey and ultimately, own their lives through coaching and yoga. So you can also find the healing yoga that I mentioned, the integrative modality on my website. And I also work remotely or in person with people for life coaching. And you're welcome to connect with me directly on LinkedIn. It's the only social media platform I'm really on. A small story, I tried Instagram, really realized it was a misalignment with who I was. So I have a profile there that is completely, just kind of sitting in the void. So I won't be that much of help to you there. But you can also just email me directly at wellnesswithaudreyt@gmail.com. And I'm happy to respond, answer any questions, or provide any resources to you. And if you're in the DC and Northern Virginia area, I host events and classes on topics like walking meditation or the breathwork 101 workshop that I mentioned, or just enjoying pleasures of wandering and other mindfulness topics. I'm a pretty chill person, and not scary, I think. So feel free to reach out.
So Audrey, I'd like to thank you for your time and energy and efforts, really just carving out the space to meet with us and, allowing us to hear what you have to say regarding the wellness space, your experiences from transitioning from tech to wellness, and also dropping gems so that we can, be more mindful of expressing and living life to what it has to offer. Audrey, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience before we sign off with you?
Seek quietness in a world that's getting noisier and noisier. Don't feel compelled to, fight the noise with more noise. It's my view that, you'll end up feeling really depleted and drained, and the people who care and want to listen will listen to you. So I guess that's one thing that I think is super important. I also encourage you to just be present with yourself and others. Give yourself time and space to process. I've been amazed so far after quitting my job and giving myself time and space to do tasks a day, that one task or two tasks can fill my whole day, or just meeting with someone can fill my whole day. And then, I spend the rest of the time processing it, but it's good. I'm like really present in every ounce of the moment, which has just been really lovely to kind of go at my own pace and my own rhythm and find my own sort of flow. So I encourage you to do the same as much as you can, and give yourself the grace to accept yourself, all of your needs. You aren't strange or weird for wanting, certain things. And I think most importantly, nothing is your responsibility. Seriously, it's so freeing to just not be responsible for anything except for yourself. Like, you living, you being happy. Obviously, I don't mean that in the sense of trampling over other people or, not being mindful of how you're interacting with others, but just know that, the only thing you can control are your own actions, and you deserve to just be free and happy. You don't really owe the universe or anybody anything.